You go.
Hello, my name is Jamie. This is Riley here. We're going to talk to you about the past battle of Cambria, most technological warfare in history. So it started in November 20th, 1917 to 7th December 1917. It was sort of like to take, the Allies wanted to take over the Hindenburg Line, which was a strategic advantage because it transported weapons and supplies to the Germans. The battle was fought in Cambria, north of France, by the River. Now, the leaders of the Royal Artillery, the 9th Division, was Major General Hugh Tudor, and he was really eager to sort of use these tanks, and General Haig wasn't really convinced at all, because he believed old-fashioned and horses and foot soldiers, but he was sort of like the main person who wanted to use these tanks, and that's really how. The Second Army was led by George von der Marwitz, who also led the Battle of Arras. He was also, like Hugh Tudor, really wanted to use these tanks, but he was really shocked at how much power and the damage the tank could actually do to soldiers, and he wanted to use those also. The rear leader was Sir Julian Bright, who was the commander of the British Army. He also thought tanks were useful, but Hugh Tudor was sort of the main key decisions. Used tanks and heavy artillery to really suppress the German defence, because the German defence was so strong, and they wanted to use the tanks to sort of break them down. But the Germans sort of wanted to surround the British regiments by using various counter-attacks and offensive, which left the British isolated and then eventually defeated. Riley,
I'll do mine now.
yeah.
Alright, I'm looking at tanks and what they were used for. The main use of tanks was to draw fire away from advancing foot soldiers, because they could take it with their heavy armour. They also used to suppress enemy positions, so they'd fire on enemy positions, so they didn't really want to get up again and start shooting at people. 376 tanks were used in Cambria, which I believe was the highest amount of tanks used in one battle in the First World War. It was also used to basically blitz the enemy positions, so they didn't really have much time and effort to really counter-attack. They were used to crush the barbed wire, so Allied troops could get through instead of jumping on top of it and let something fall over them.
I think the quality of soldiers, they were the 1st, 2nd and 3rd Cavalry Divisions, the V Corps, and one of them was the West Lancashire Division. The British Army had 40,000 casualties, but they're taking 11 prisoners, 11,000. But the British soldiers, the tanks were sort of used to protect the soldiers, because, like Riley said, it was sort of tanks would go first and soldiers would go second to give tanks cover. And that's how they took so many prisoners. The cavalry, the 5th Guard, and the 3rd Foot Soldiers were the German defence of the Hindenburg Line. They suffered 40,000 casualties, but the main I took 9,000 prisoners. But the most casualties were caused because the Germans were really shocked and surprised of counter-attacking the tanks and how much they could do. On the first day, the British took 7 miles on the first day of passing Cambrai, so the tanks were sort of effective. Ronnie, you can talk about something.
Well, yeah, there was many technological advances that were used in Battle of Cambrai. Obviously, the tanks, they were a massive role. There were also planes that were starting to be introduced. They did aerial reconnaissance on enemy positions and key enemy structures. and brought them back so the Allies knew and had a bearing of where the enemies were situated. They were also kind of used as bombers. They kind of dropped things on enemy positions. So, you know, extra bombardment.
Oh yeah, the planes were also used to give information and pictures, instructions and weaknesses during the trench. But also used for like aerial ability, which sort of. The strategy was like General Haig wanted to use a surprise and a quick counterattacks instead of having everyone fighting. It was like a slow sort of speed. They used like say 350 tanks, but they bombarded Hindenburg line, which was sort of like a bombardment, and this sort of like surprised Germans, so they couldn't really react fast enough. So the British sort of took advance, and with the tanks they broke through the defence. But however, the British took most of Cambria, but the main reason why they didn't really take all of it is because like the tanks, they were sort of like the downfall, because at the bridge collapse at Maz, because the cavalry could cross over, and the bridge was sort of like the main part of Cambrai, and the Allies needed to take that because it was like the sort of the heart of Cambrai. So during that bridge collapse, 179 had been destroyed, which meaning more than half of the tanks that were used were lost. So the Germans used this to regroup, and they used a new tactic, which was the Husa. This was like a number of attempts on going counter-attacks, which sort of surprised, like I said, the British, and this sort of used. Well, the judgment affected the overall battle. Like, the British was sort of, it was good at the start, but they gained 7 miles in one day, which was like a record, but as the battle went on, the Germans were sort of counter-attacking, and, you know, regiments were left isolated. The war overall was effective, but because it showed like technology could be used, better horses and foot soldiers, and it sort of helped win the war. Like we watched a video on like the last battle, that technology was sort of like the main push to win the World War. And today, the British warfare is mostly technological, from tanks, planes, nuclear. So it's sort of this battle sort of introduced technology, and it might have like helped the British win the war, sort of. Thank you for listening to Cambria, and thank you Riley, and thank you everybody for listening.